Hello friends, how are you? We are meeting after very long time. Now today I am going to talk on the biophysics of ear. Before that, I wish all of you the best health, stay home, stay safe. Now regarding the ear, what we are going to study is some of the basic things. What is ear? Ear is nothing but it is a receptor organ for hearing and maintaining body equilibrium. It is composed of three main regions that all of us know. Outer ear means this part, that is what is its function, it functions in hearing. It is followed by that is what we call the auditory canal, or that is the auditory meatus, or it is called as middle ear. It also functions in hearing, and the most innermost part of the ear is what we call it as the inner ear, and say it deals with the functions in that is the both hearing and that is the equilibrium. Now what is the main function of the ear? As we know that the main function of the ear is perception of the sound. What is sound? We have learned that sound is the sensation produced when longitudinal vibrations of the molecules in the external environment, that is, say, with alternate phases of condensation and rarefaction of the molecules which strike the tympanic membrane. You have seen this sinusoidal wave pattern of that is sound wave, and as we know that is the peaks are known as that is the crest, and that is burrows are known as the top. The distance from one peak of the crest to the next, that is the crest, it is called as that is the one wavelength. Similarly, the height of say that is the crest from this line is nothing but what we call it as a amplitude. What is the unit of the sound waves? That is all the time it is measured in the units of frequency, that is in hertz. Means that is equal to the waves passing at a given point per second. Similarly, we know that there are some of the basic characteristics of the sound that we know. Just we will try to summarize it. The first important thing is that speed of the sound. That is, in the air at 0 degrees centigrade, at sea level, sound travels at a rate of approximately 330 meters per second, as shown here into the bracket 1100 feet per second. While at 20 degrees centigrade, it travels at a rate of 349 meters per second, and that is in the bracket as mentioned 1150 feet per second. Just you concentrate on these two factors, that is the change in the temperature, so causes change in the say that is the velocity of the sound. It increases when the temperature increases. In the water at 20 degrees sound, say that is sound travels at much faster speed of 1450 to 1500 meters per second. The speed is faster in the salt water as compared to fresh water. Further, the speed of the sound in water slightly increases with temperature and altitude. What is this frequency of the sound? It is the number of waves passing per second at a given point. The unit of frequency is the hertz, that is in the bracket as shown, the capital H and that is the small z. Range of human hearing is approximately within the range of 22 to 20,000 hertz. Range of average speaking voice is approximately in the range of 2000 to 3000 hertz. What is this amplitude? Amplitude of the sound is the strength which determines its loudness. Means which you can hear me. The intensity of the sound is measured in terms of maximum pressure change at the tympanic membrane, which is the part of the beginning of, that is what we call it as a middle ear, a demarcation line of, that is the middle ear, tympanic membrane, which is more commonly expressed as sound pressure level. Means amplitude is expressed as sound pressure level, SPL. The unit of sound pressure level is that is decibel, that all of us know, that is capital B and followed by small d. That is, the amplitude of the sound is measured by using logarithmic scale, that is what we call it as dB. Intensity of the sound, or that is what we call it as, that is the, we express, that is in the that is the number of decibel. Considering the intensity of the sound is equal to 10 log of intensity of the sound to the intensity of standard sound. Remember that sound intensity is proportional to the square root of sound pressure. Hence, number of decibel is equal to 20 log of, that is the pressure of the sound, to the pressure of, that is the standard sound. Now this shows here a normal scale of audibility as compared to the your decibel of for some of the common sounds. Now it shows minimum to the maximum. Now see, that is from, this is very important, this range 0 to 60. I would say that it is a very comfortable zone for our audibility, and further above 80 to 160 you will find that the sound that is the intensity increases. One important thing, just give a look. Our whisper, that is the where you will find that its decibel scale is approximately 20 decibel, and that for jet plane with burner, that is of 160 decibel. These are the inaudible sounds, and these are all audible sound 20 to 60, up to the certain level 80 decibels we can hear, that is comfortably. However, but even I consider this 80 decibel is also, that is the unaudible sound. It is not pleasurable sound, in short. Now coming to the fourth property of the sound, that what we call it as a pure tone. A single frequency sound is called as pure tone. For example, a sound of frequency 25 to 50 or 100 Hertz. We have come across one of the terminology of the characteristic of the sound, that what we call it as a overtone. A complex sound is a mixture of pure tones. The lowest frequency at which source vibrates is called as fundamental or primary frequency. All other frequencies which are multiples of the fundamental frequency are called overtones or harmonics. Overtones determine the equality of the timbre of the sound. Now next, what is the timbre of the sound? It is the quality of musical note or sound or tone that distinguishes the different types of sound production, such as voices, musical instruments, string instruments, wind instruments, and percussion instruments. Seventh important property of the sound is what we call it the commonly auditory masking, which occurs when the perception of one sound is affected by presence of another sound. For example, low frequency or broad banded sounds like water running will mask the higher frequency sounds which are softer at the listener's ear. A conversational tone from across the room is the example of auditory masking or discussion in the room. Now we come across the other property, what we call it as complex sound, which refers to more than one frequency. For example, human voice is the best example of a complex sound. What do you mean by the pitch? It is the subjective sensation produced by frequency of the sound. Higher the frequency, greater is the pitch. Pitch of average male voice is 120 Hz and that of female voice is 250 Hz. This is a very interesting thing. The male vocal folds are between 1.75 centimeter and 2 centimeter, means approximately say 0.75 inches to say 1 inches in length. While say female vocal that is folds are between 1.25 centimeter to 1.75 centimeter, means approximately its length is about 0.5 inches to 0.75 inches. An average individual can distinguish or differentiate about 200 different pitches. Now coming to the structure of the ear, we will not go in that much details. I will try to cover some of the points which are needed for our discussion. Now the external ear, which consists of what we call the pinna or auricle. You can see inside that there is a canal or channel, that what we call it as a external acoustic or auditory meters, which consist of ceruminous gland which secrete these are vast secreting gland, and there are, apart from that, there are also other glands, what we call it as that is the sebaceous glands. Then this is the structure of the external part of the ear. It shows here three divisions of ear that which I have mentioned. So this is what we call it as this, up to this part it is called as the outer or external ear. This is this part is called as a middle ear, and innermost part there are two important things. What you observe is this coil portion, just that is we call it as a cochlea. And secondly, you will find that this type of that is canal. There are three such types of the canal which are called as the semicircular canal, and which here help to that is maintain bodily equilibrium. Similarly, the function of this part, what I mentioned, is that cochlea is the actual perception of the sound, and which is conducted to the auditory nerve. Then coming to the external ear, as I told you, it is pinna or auricle, okay, and it is followed by this that is what we call it the channel, or that is the external auditory or acoustic meters. It ends here, that is first part of that is the ear, that what we call the external ear. Later on it is followed by the middle ear. How it is demarcated? It is demarcated just by, in short, the funnel shape, a membrane, that is what we call it as a tympanic membrane, which faces at the outer portion or at external ear, and the inner portion at middle ear. Now what you can see here, that the middle ear consists of not only tympanic membrane. This tympanic membrane is attached to the chain of three small bones that we call it the ossicular bones, and that we will see there are three types of those bones. I will just try to make it out here. That is this one broad, what we call as a malleus. The second, which is attached to it, we call it as a incus, and this is what we call as the stirrup, and which is connected to the cochlear part. One important thing is that middle ear is not continuous. That is it breaks somewhere, and it is connected to the what we call it as a pharyngotympanic or auditory tube, or very commonly what we call it the eustachian tube. What is the function is that here tries to maintain, that is the pressure of air from external ear, and that is the inside of the ear, that is the middle part. In short, that is this figure explains here, that is the three parts of the ear, that is the external ear, middle ear, and that is the inner ear. Then inner ear many of the times is also called as, that is the bony labyrinth, that we'll see later. Now coming to the middle ear, it is nothing but consists of a tympanic cavity. It is a small air-filled space located within the petrous portion of the temporal bone. Medial wall is penetrated by oval window and the round window, which are directly attached to the the cochlear portion that we will see later. The pharyngeotympanic tube or auditory or eustachian tube is there, links the middle ear with the pharynx. Now the structure of the middle ear, what you can see here is that, as I have already mentioned, is that this is the membranous part, that is what we call it as facing external ear, that is we call it the tympanic membrane, and it is followed by these three smaller bones or ossicular chain of the bones that we call it as a first that is what we call it as a malleus, which is it is also called as a that is a hammer, since it is having the shape of hammer. Then that is other bone which is attached to the head of this malleus, what we call as the incus, or it is called as the anvil. Secondly, it is attached to the stapes, which is in the shape just like a stirrup, and it is attached to the cochlear portion beginning here with the plate of this stirrup attached to the this window like portion, that which is this part which is attached to this first window is called as that is the oval window, which is deep to the stapage, and secondly which is covered here by the membrane part, and that we call as a round window. Once again, coming to that is the inner ear, just which I have mentioned here, this is the continuation with the both windows. You will find this is the that is the 3 round, mean out of these 2 rounds are complete and one is 3/4, means it is better 2 and 3/4 round of this structure, what we call it the cochlea. And here you will find that what is its function, perception of the sound, and the second part, that what we call it as that is the semicircular canal, or consists of what we call it the vestibular apparatus. Now the middle ear, as I mentioned, consists of tympanic membrane, eustachian or pharyngeotympanic tube, ear ossicle. This is the smallest chain of the bones in the body. As I have mentioned the names, that is malleus, which is attached to the eardrum, incus between the malleus and the stapes. Stapes vibrates against the oval window and causes the propagation of sound waves in the inner part of the ear. You can see here, apart from that you can see there are that is the 2 types of that is the muscle which are present here. That is one of them here, that is one which is attached to the that is the what we call it as the stapes. It is called the stapedius muscle, and other which is attached to the tympanic membrane, it is called as the tensor tympanic membrane. Their function is that is for what we call it in short at this stage, try to understand, it is called as that is the matching of the sound, or what we call commonly as the sound impedance. Then coming to the middle ear, as I told you, there are 3 chains of the bones, that is malleus, incus, and that is the stapes. One important thing, that is just try to understand here, malleus attaches to the eardrum. It resembles hammer, consists of 2 parts, a head part and 3 processes. Incus, that is present between the malleus and the stapes. Stapes it vibrates against the oval window of that is the cochlea. You can see separately it is shown here. This is the tympanic membrane. This is the malleus with its head, and that is the anvil, and this is the stapes with its that is the foot plate. Then, as I told you, that this is separately shows the structure of that is what we call it as that is the bone of that is the malleus. Then now coming to the middle ear, now we have come across 2 terminologies, that is oval window and the round window. Now these windows are nothing but which are attached to the inner part of the ear, that is the what we call it as a medial wall or the labyrinth wall of the middle ear, which contains here these 2 windows, oval window and round window. This oval window is called as a fenestra, that is vestibule. is present above, in which foot plate or the face plate or stapes is attached. Then it is below that there is another window, so that we call it as a round window. It is called as a fenestra cochlea. It's present in the lower part and is enclosed by a thin membrane called as secondary membrane. As I have mentioned, there are two types of the muscle. Middle ear contains two muscles, the tensor tympani and the stapes. Then coming to the internal ear. Now there is an inner ear, also called as a labyrinth, since it is situated in the bony cavity, lies within the petrous portion of the temporal bone. Bony labyrinth, a cavity consists of three parts. What is it? That is the semicircular canals that I told you, okay, and it is consists of, that is the vestibule here, and that is this cochlear part. Then coming to that is the same structure. Just please concentrate on this figure which shows here semicircular canals, and that is the cochlea. Coming to internal ear, the auditory apparatus is formed by the duct of cochlea, which lies within the body of cochlea. Let us talk here about internal ear. The auditory apparatus is formed by the duct of cochlea, which lies within the that is the body of cochlea. The cochlear portion of the labyrinth is coil tube or structure, which in humans is 35 mm long, approximately 3.5 centimeter long, with 2 and 3/4 tons. Along its length, we find here two membranes that we will see in the that is the vertical section. Along its length, it consists of two membranes, basilar membrane and resonance membrane, which divides this bony cochlea in three chambers or compartments, what we call as scalae. Chambers are called as scala vestibuli, this is the upper chamber. Middle one is scala media, which is present at the middle portion, and scala tympani, which is the lower chamber. Now just give a look to the further figure, you will see later. That is means just give to the, now we have take just take that is the vertical section, and what you will find that these are the this shows here, this is the that the first that is coil or round of cochlea, it is followed by second, then it is followed by 2 and 3/4 round of cochlea. Now what is the idea is that you can see here, that is the three chambers, that is what we call it as a that is the that is what we call it as the upper one, upper one, that is the scala vestibuli, scala media, and that is the scala tympani. These all chambers are here filled with, that is fluid. This type of the fluid are totally different. Just give look to this figure, then you will understand. That is, we have considered here only one part of this figure. Let us understand here, we have considered this part, okay, and here you can see, that is, this shows here, that is the bony labyrinth, and it shows here, that is the the three compartments which are formed here due to these two membranes which are present in the cochlea. One is resonance membrane, second is that is what we call it as, that is the basilar membrane. And due to this membrane, it is divided into three regions. Upper one is called as the scala vestibuli, the middle one is called as the scala media, and that is lower one is called as the scala tympani. Now remember here, the scala media is here filled with, that is the endolimb, and one important structure on the basilar membrane, you may be knowing it, that is what we call it the organ of CORTI. What is its function? The main function is the perception of the sound by the special types of the the hair cell which are present on the basilar membrane. Its function we will see, and these cells are here further supplied to the cochlear nerve and forms auditory pathway. In short, what is it? Then here you can see, that is as I already told you, the scala say that is the media is here filled here with say endolimb, scala say vestibuli and scala tympani. They are filled here with the perilimb. Just try to understand here the composition of these two fluids is different. Just try to concentrate on this part. Now you will understand here this cochlea is attached to the wall of the labyrinth, or say the medial wall, which I have mentioned. That is, it consists of, that is the two, say that is the window. This is what we call it as a oval window, and lower one is called as a round wave. Now when say that is the sound waves strike tympanic say membrane, what is the mechanism? Here say this all ossicular say that is chain of the bones say vibrate, maybe especially this part, that is the say what we call it as the, that is the stapes, and so it pushes say the sound waves in the with the help of this structure, what we call stirrup like, and it say this passes the sound waves from that is the through this fluid, upper fluid to the lower fluid, the perilymph. And remember one thing here, these fluids are not continuous, they do not mix, okay, and say at present, and here say that what is that, we also know that, we will also know it, and I will just slightly explain it. Then coming to the say the one important thing I would like to mention here, that is about say that is the three say that is the chambers of that is the say that is internal ear or the cochlea, just we have seen, that is say that is the scala tympani and scala vestibuli are filled with the perilimb, which is in say that is is slightly equivalent to composition of that is the extracellular fluid, and communicate with each other at the apex of the cochlea through a small opening called as helicotrema. At the base of the cochlea, scala vestibuli ends at the oval window enclosed by the foot plate of the stapes, that we have seen. Scala tympani ends at the round window and is enclosed by flexible secondary tympanic membrane. Scala media is continuous with membranous labyrinth and does not communicate with the other two scala. It contains endolimb, which is quite identical to the intracellular fluid. This figure you have just seen, okay. Then now coming to the very important structure which I have mentioned, which is present on that is the basilar membrane, that we call it as a organ of CORTI. It is nothing but its sense organ of hearing is present on the top of the basilar membrane in the scala medium. Now it contains of auditory receptors. There are some of the say supporting cells. Now just I will show you one figure. Just you can see here. Say going back to this, you will find, just give a look to this figure. What it showed, it shows here say that is the upper membrane, what we call the tectorial membrane, and this is the basilar membrane. And you can see here that is the variety of the cells, and you will find these are the say two important cells are there, what we call it as that is the inner hair cell and outer hair cell. They are say they just look say different in the shape. One is say flask shape, and this is other is say that is a taller cell. Other important thing is that these cells are having that is the projection from them, and that we call it as a say that as a say that is a hair, or that we call it as the stereocilia. One important thing is that these say cells embed in the tectorial membrane, and the movement of the tectorial membrane causes the stimulation of say this cell through the this say hair, or what we call a stereocilia, and just causes here say the propagation of that is the impulses across that is the say auditory nerve. Same time remember here say there also say slide that is a movement of that is the basilar membrane occurs. Now going back to say this organ of CORTI. The organ of CORTI is nothing but it is sense organ of hearing, is present on top of the basilar membrane in the scala medium. It contains of auditory receptor, just I mentioned. Important components of the organ of CORTI are say rods of CORTI or pillar cell. These are two projections, inner and outer, from the basilar membrane into the scala media, between two rods is the tunnel of CORTI filled with CORTI limb. Exact function of the rod and CORTI limb is not known. Just look to this figure. You will find that these are the that is the pillar, this type of the pillars, what we call it as a rods of CORTI. One is the outer part and one is situated at the inner portion, and this is the space is called as tunnel of CORTI, which is filled here with the CORTI limb. Okay. Then coming to other types of the cell, these are all supporting cells. We will find that cells of Claudius, cells of Hansen, then that is you will find that there are the other types of the cells which I mentioned. Similarly, here you will find that there is a reticular lamina which is present at the top of this cells. Next is the hair cells. We have seen that these are actual receptor cells which convert sound energy into the electric energy. Two types of the cells are present on the basilar membrane. That is, one is inner hair cell and the outer hair cell. Just look to this figure. That is, one is that is present at the other part, that is the of this organ of CORTI, that we call it as the inner hair cells, and these are the outer hair cell. Then the inner hair cells are flask shaped, just I mentioned, and arranged in a single row that is the internal or medial to the inner rod. These are about 3,500 in number. These are responsible for fine auditory transmission. Outer hair cells are cylindrical in shape, arranged in 3 to 4 layers, external or lateral to the outer rod. These are 20,000 in number and detect the presence of sound. On the upper surface of the hair cells are present tiny cilia, just I mentioned. They are also called as stereocilia, which embed or penetrating the tectorial membrane. Now there are present that is supporting cells, just I have mentioned. Inner phalangeal cells support the inner hair cells. There are diater cells which are present at the outer phalangeal cells are situated between the outer hair cells. Hansen cells, that is, lie outside the diater cell. Claudius cells lie outside Hansen cells. Now just I would like to once again repeat it. The supporting cells, these are that is the diater cells, then Hansen cells and Claudius cells. Now coming to the tectorial membrane, in short, it consists of gelatinous matrix with delicate fibers. Membrane is attached to the upper surface of the spiral lamina and its free edge extends beyond the outermost neuroepithelial cells. Bearing force between hair cells and tectorial membrane produces the stimulus to the hair cell. In short, just try to understand the movement of this tectorial membrane causes here, that is the stimulation of internal and that is the outer hair cells. Now what is the nerve supply? There is nerve supply to the hair cells. The afferent fibers supplying the hair cells is a cochlear division of 8th cranial nerve. Cell bodies of these fibers are located in the spiral ganglion. Efferent fibers to the hair cells originate from both the ipsilateral and the contralateral sides via the olivocochlear bundle. Now there is one important characteristic of that is a cochlea. If just try to extend it, what you will find that we will extend it in a straight in the straight line with a length of that is 35 mm. What is the peculiarity of this cochlea? If you observe here, it propagates the sound waves, that we know. But one important thing that it doesn't propagate the sound of the same frequency. If you just give a look to this figure, what you will find is that you will find at the base of the cochlea, there is a propagation of 20,000 Hz sound. Later on, there is a propagation of 7,000 Hz, 5000 hertz, and the peak at the apex of the cochlea is 2000 hertz. Meaning, in short, so you can say the sound waves or intensity or the frequency of the sound waves goes on decreasing as the part or the at the different place of the cochlea. And that's why here say, just consider here, that is the high frequency waves, say that is where you will find that they are propagated, that is in the range of, that is the 1500 to the 20,000 hertz, means how they are propagated. In the, say, coming to the basilar membrane, say when the waves reach here, they say that is the cause the propagation of frequency waves between 600 to the 1500 hertz. Similarly, low frequency, say, waves, that is they are also propagated at a distance of 200 to the 600. You can see the change in the pattern of, that is the frequency. What does it mean? In short, we can say that sound waves, or if they have its frequencies of the sound is propagated differently at different places, different, say, sides of the cochlea, and hence, say, this is nothing but what we call it as, that is the, say, that is the place theory of sound, say, that is the propagation. Similarly, coming to, say, there is the auditory pathway. I will not go in that much details. Okay, now there is a cochlear nuclei, and you can see in this figure, that is the sound waves through cochlea, they are propagated and they reach to the, say, that is the cerebral cortex in the temporal, say, portion of the brain. They are propagated at the temporal portion of the brain, that I will mention here shortly. Okay, then coming to the, say, very important aspect, or that is finally this very important aspect of the sound perception is that this all, say, that is the ends of auditory pathway, they terminate into the auditory cortex. So this auditory cortex consists some of the areas. For example, major areas constitute auditory cortex present in the temporal lobe, which I have mentioned. It is divided into, say, the two parts: primary auditory cortex and auditory association areas. The primary auditory cortex consists of areas 41 and, that is the areas 42. The auditory association areas, they are, say, areas 22, 21 and 20. What is these areas? These are these certain numbers are allotted to the different, say, the areas of the brain, and that is what we call it as a, say, Brodmann's number or Brodmann's classification of the brain. Okay, then coming to, say, it shows here this, say, temporal lobe, and shows here that is the our, say, that is the, say, area 41, 42, 22, okay, and that is the 21. And here, say, once again, just I will just try to, say, correlate this. Auditory area 42 and 41 as shown in the figure, it receives and perceives auditory information and comprise loudness, source of direction of sound. Auditory association areas, there are 22, 21 and 37. Area 22, it correlates present auditory information with the past experience. Just for example, say, I will just try to correlate with this, say, that is the test. When we test, say, different types of food, we correlate this test with our past experience. Similarly here, that is this function of the association area, area 22, it correlates present auditory information with the past experience. Area 21 and 37, it is concerned with analysis, interpretation and integration of auditory impulses which take place in this area. Coming to the areas 22, 21 and 37, once again it is a special area in our brain that we call as a Wernicke's area 22. Hence I underline is what is the function of this area, say, 22, which are concerned in general comprehension, that is the understanding of, that is the language. Then going to, say, the very important aspect after understanding this, say, there are some of the peculiarities of the auditory sound. which are not needed for you, but I will just say that how these sound waves are conducted. Now, what is the role of external ear? Now, the main function of the external ear is the funneling of the sound waves, that is the pinna and auditory meters. What is the role of the middle ear? The sound waves from external ear strikes tympanic membrane to cause vibrations. Eustachian tube equalizes the pressure at two sides of the tympanic membrane, that is the external ear and the middle ear. Now, vibrating say of the tympanic membrane vibrates ear ossicles. Hence, tympanic membrane acts as, that is the first part, pressure receiver, a resonator, and critically dampens that the vibrations of tympanic membrane stop immediately after the end of the sound waves, when the sound wave stops coming, say being propagated to the ear. Then say it is the same function which I told you. Now let us assume that the sound waves are propagated from the, say that is the external ear, they reach to the, say that is the middle ear, okay, and in the middle ear you can see this strike here tympanic membrane, there occurs the vibration of this ossicular chain of the bone, and here the most part which is vibrating is what we call it as a, say, plate of, that is the what we call it that is stapes, and say is pushed back and the forward direction and propagating the sound waves across this cochlear portion, and due to which say there occurs the movement of the fluid and the impulses are produced in the organ of CORTI, and they are propagated across the auditory nerve to the auditory pathway, and they finally terminate into the, say that is the cerebral cortex, the areas which are mentioned. Now here say there are some of the mechanisms which are involved in, say that is a sound, say that is a propagation, mechanical sound wave conduction from middle ear to the, say, inner ear. Now just for your importance, that is just for, now there are some of the, say, things which are involved, that is there occurs mechanical sound wave conduction from middle ear to the inner ear. The mechanisms which are involved are what we call it as a impedance matching mechanism of the sound. Second is phase differential between oval and the round window, that is related with the natural resonance of external ear and the middle ear, and that is the attenuation reflex. Similarly, now what is this impedance matching? The air filled in the middle ear conducts sound waves mechanically to the fluid filled internal ear to the ossicular, say, system. Effective transfer of the sound energy from an air to the fluid medium is difficult because most of the sound is reflected due to the different mechanical properties of the two media, that is, say, and that is nothing but what we call it as a impedance mismatching. We call it as a impedance mismatching. Now there is a, say, amplification of the sound pressure. What is it? Say that is the effective vibratory area of tympanic membrane is, say, that is 45 square millimeter. The area of the foot plate is, say, about 3.2 millimeters square. Area ratio is, that is the, say, how much is it, 14 is to, say, 1. Lever ratio is 1.3 to 1. Total transformer ratio is, that is 14 to 1.3, 18.1. Means, say, that is thus, what does it mean? Say the lever action of ossicle increase the force of movement by 1.3 times. Hydraulic action of the tympanic membrane is exerted due to the effective vibratory area of the tympanic membrane, that is about 45 square millimeter, is much greater than the stapes oval window surface, that is 3.2 square millimeter. Thus, these size difference amplify the pressure exerted on the oval window 14 folds. Then there is one, say, characteristics, curved membrane effect. Movement of tympanic membrane are more at the periphery than at the center where malleus handle is attached, which provide same leverage. Thus, the above three mechanisms together increases the sound pressure 18 folds in short, that is 14 into 1.3. In this way, the impedance mismatching between the air-filled middle ear and the fluid-filled inner ear is mostly compensated. That is the mechanism or idea behind, that is the impedance matching. Means in short, say what does it say? That is, say in this way the impedance mismatching between air filled with the middle ear and the fluid filled inner ear is mostly, that is the compensated. Now there is also one important thing I would like to mention just for your information. Phase differential between oval and the round window. The sound waves striking the tympanic membrane do not reach the oval and the round window simultaneously. Sound waves reach the oval window through the ossicular chain, that is through the stapes. Thus, when the oval window is receiving wave of compression, the round window is at the phase of rarefaction. If the sound waves strike both windows simultaneously, they would cancel each other's effect with no movement of perilimb and no hearing. This is very important, just try to understand it. They never say, that is, say you may say that, say they do not say, that is the, say activate, say at the same time. If they would have activated, what does it say? If the sound waves strike both windows simultaneously, they would cancel each other's effect with no movement of perilimb and no hearing. This acoustic separation of the windows is possible due to the presence of, say, that is, say intact tympanic membrane and a cushion of the air in the middle ear around the, say, that is the round window. Then there is one important, say, reflex you may come across, say just for your information, we come across, say, that is attenuation reflex. Is also called as tympanic reflex or acoustic reflex, which reduces sound pressure amplitude. Stimulus for this reflex is sound. What is this reflex activity? The two muscles of the middle ear that we know, tensor tympani and stapedius, contract reflexively in response to the intense sound. Contraction of the tensor tympani muscle pulls the malleus inward, whereas the contraction of the stapedius muscle pulls the stapes outward. These two opposing forces make the ossicular system very rigid, and therefore it fails to vibrate with the sound waves. The sound is not allowed to enter the inner ear, that is attenuated, or that is intensity is reduced by 30 to 40 decibels. This prevents damage to the cochlea from intense sound such as loud music, of jet, aircraft, etc. That is the importance of attenuation reflex. Now coming to, say, that is there is other phenomenon, that's what we call the transduction of the sound wave. Just give a look to this. Transduction of the mechanical sound wave into the electrical signals occurs in the organ of CORTI. This is just very important. How do we perceive the sound? As I told you, that is due to the activity of the hair cells at the basilar membrane. The sound is propagated in the form of electrical impulses to, that is the, say, auditory nerve and reaches the cerebral cortex. Now say movement of the organ of CORTI, that's say the in and out motion of the oval window produced by the pressure wave is converted into up and down motion of the basilar membrane, that we know. Sound waves entering the inner ear, say from the oval window, spread along the, say, scala vestibule as a traveling wave. Most of the sound energy is transferred directly from the scala vestibule to the scala tympani, and very little of the sound waves reaches to the helicotrema at the apex of, that is the cochlea. As sound energy passes from scala vestibula to scala tympani, it causes basilar membrane to vibrate. The up and down motion of the basilar membrane causes the organ of CORTI to vibrate up and down. causing the say hairs, or what we call stereocilia of the hair cells, to bend back and forth. The bottoms of the hair cells are attached to the basilar membrane, and the stereocilia are connected to the overlying tectorial membrane. Second part is that because the tectorial and the basilar membrane are attached at the different points on the limbus, they slide past each other as they vibrate up and down, causing the stereocilia on hair cells to bend back and forth. When the organ of CORTI moves up, the stereocilia bend away from the limbus. When the organ of CORTI moves down, the stereocilia bend towards the limbus. What is that? I will just explain you. Now, one important thing is that, say, there occurs the polarization of the stereocilia, okay, and when the organ of CORTI moves upward, the stereocilia bend away from the limbus and they depolarize. When the organ of CORTI moves downward, the stereocilia bend toward the limbus and they hyperpolarize. This is the important thing which I had told you, where this organ of CORTI is situated across, say, that is the basilar membrane. Now this part where you say, as I mentioned, at say, this is now just for your information, that is, this part is called as the limbus, or what we call the spiral limbus, and this is the movement of the tectorial membrane over, that is the hair cell, that you will understand in the say further figure. Now say inner ear, this is the same figure which you can see. See, now what I said here, say, that is, say, these are the, say, upward, say, that is the movement of, that is the basilar membrane, say, and this is the downward movement of, that is the basilar membrane. And see here the movement of the hair, that is the, say, stereocilia. When it moves in the upward direction, it moves away and it moves, say, at the outside, and when it moves in the downward, say, it moves in the, say, that is the inner part at, that is the, say, limbus. Means what you can see here is this, in this figure, say, this, say, movement of, say, tectorial membrane. It is the same thing. The basilar membrane, suppose that when it moves in upward direction, there occurs the bending of these hair cells away, and when it moves downward, it moves in the, say, that is the inner part or inner region. And that we have know, that is, once again remember that this is the, say, that is the, these are the resting cells, and it shows the activity when they are not stimulated. When they are stimulated, say, there occurs the movement of, say, basilar membrane in the upward direction, and the stereocilia, they move away and they cause depolarization. And say, when they move in the downward direction, there occurs the movement of hair cells in the, say, opposite direction, and they call hyperpolarization. When depolarization causes stimulation and hyperpolarization causes inhibition. Now, for this is just for your information. Remember that this mechanism is little bit complicated to understand, but hence I am not going in that much details for you people. Then say, that is the place principle that I already told you. That is, say, that is the place principle of, say, frequency determination, or Becquerel trailing theory. Okay, just I will finally say, I would like to summarize it. Frequency of the sound that activates particular hair cells depends on the location of the hair cells along the basilar membrane. Basilar membrane is narrowest and steepest at the base of the cochlea, and near, that is near oval and the round window, and widest and most complicated at the apex of the cochlea, that is near helicotrema. The energy contained in the high frequency sound passes through the organ of CORTI near the base of the cochlea. In contrast, the energy in the low frequency sound passes through the organ of CORTI near the, say, that is the apex, near the apex, just which I have mentioned here. The last part which I would like to mention, that is just for your information. There are some of the types of deafness that we call it as a conduction deafness and the nerve deafness. In the conduction deafness, in this deafness, sound waves are not properly conducted to the cochlea, may be due to the impaired sound transmission in the outer or middle ear. What does it say? What are the causes? Narrowing or blockage of the external auditory emitters by pus, wax, coal dust, etc. Thickening of tympanic membrane followed by repeated middle ear infections. Exudate in the middle ear, that is what we call it as a commonly otitis media. Dislocation, fixation, ankylosis of the ossicular chain. There also occur osteosclerosis, that is a narrowing of the gap between the foot plate of the stapes and the surrounding bone. The progression to fixation of the foot plate when the gap is, say, that is a bridge. Means what it says, that in the osteosclerosis is a narrowing of the gap between the foot plate of the stapes and surrounding bone. Now it progressing to the fixation of the foot plate when the gap is, say, that is the bridge. The second type is, say, that is the nerve deafness, or it is called as the sensorineural deafness. Defective hearing due to damage of cochlea, or better words I would say, that is, it is the damage due to the cochlear hair cells, cochlear nerve endings or central pathways called as a nerve deafness. It is the inability of the nerve to conduct, that is the sound impulses. What are the causes? The very commonest causes are toxic degeneration of the hair cells due to use of antibiotics such as streptomycin, gentamicin, quinine. Antibiotics accumulate in endolymph. There are, say, that is the tumors of acoustic or cochlear nerve or cerebellopontine angle. They also cause here nerve deafness. Due to hereditary degeneration of the hair cells, trauma to the inner ear, mechanical damage to the cranial nerve. That is 8. Diseases like, say, meningitis, rheumatism, malaria, syphilis, they are also called nerve deafness. Vascular damage in the medulla. Now there is a very common, say, abnormality that many of the times we come across such patient, tinnitus. It is the ringing sensation in the ear resulting from an irritative stimulation of inner ear or vestibulocochlear nerve. What we have seen? Now this is the end of, say, my lecture on, that is the ear. I will just try to summarize here in short what we have seen. First, we have seen what is the function of the ear. Then we have seen the properties of the sound. We have seen the structure of the ear in detail. Then also we have seen lastly, that is, say, structure of the cochlea in detail. Then also we have dealt here with a very important aspect, that is the organ of CORTI and the perception of the sound. I have also mentioned here, that is the auditory pathway. Then there are different terminologies, and last part was the types of deafness. There are, say, different techniques by which we can determine that is the deafness. The commonest, say, that is the type of the, say, that is the deafness, or can be determined here by using the tuning fork, or that is the audiometry techniques. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.